Hi, everyone. Welcome to a very special edition of We Talk Now. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media.
I'm Curt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net, your one-stop shopping spot online for cannabis news, information, and videos.
And we are very proud to be having our videos now on Cannabis.net. And we thank Curt Dalton for that honor. And tonight, speaking of honors, we are honored to have three gentlemen who all in the cannabis industry respect and look up to. One, of course, is Curt's really good friend, Bruce Linton. Tell me a little bit about Bruce Linton, Curt.
For those that don't know, he would be on the Mount Rushmore of cannabis business. Ex-CEO of Canopy Growth, received over $5 billion from Constellation Brands. He really brought legitimacy to this niche. He led the way for Canopy and bringing this entire stock market to its heights. And currently, he is involved, I think, with 5 different companies. We'll have to ask him, including MindMed, psychedelic medicines and mushrooms. So he is constantly having his finger in a lot of pots and hearing a lot of things. So I'm looking forward to see what he says.
And alongside Bruce Linton will be Joe Lusardi, the CEO of Curaleaf, a multi-state operator that is actually right here in Massachusetts, where their world headquarters is. And they are the true MSO, the multi-state operator. And Joe is someone who oversees a very large company, has grown this company, and we really look forward to talking to both of them. And then after we're done with Bruce and with Joe, who are we going to talk to, Curt?
Favorite Wall Street Journal of Cannabis editor Chris Walsh of MJBiz Daily. We're going to find out what's going on with the show in the fall. What is he hearing in the industry? When is this going to turn around? And is COVID actually good for the industry? Will it force or push legalization forward? So we get to talk to him.
And we will have all of that. But let's get this thing started now. Well, we're back. Here we are again. We Talk Now is the show. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. Joining me in the Zoom room here is Bruce Linton to my left. Joe Lusardi from Curaleaf is below me. And Curt Dalton, you are diagonal from me. From Cannabis.net. Thank you guys for joining us. And what else did you have to do besides hang out for another day in your house anyway? So I appreciate that.
It also it gave me a chance to think about what T-shirt to wear. And so
if you want to show it off the top, Bruce, feel free. There it is, Cannabis.net.
The glory days of Jamaica.
And the story of that goes that when Bruce was on one of our shows earlier, I was wearing a Legals T-shirt, the Legal Seafood Fish, and he thought that was a really cool shirt. Look, Curt's actually going to hold it up. Roger Berkowitz is a friend, and he presented that to us when he came on our show back in September. And, of course, Bruce liked it, so he's like, I want one of those. So I carried it to MJBiz in Las Vegas and gave it off to Bruce, and he was very happy, and I am too. And Bruce, you said you're getting a lot of good feedback from that.
Every time I wear it, I don't know if you could tell when Curt held it up, but the leaf is formed with a bunch of fish.
Oh yeah, so yeah, let me get a little better look here. Sorry.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so it is one of those shirts that everybody thinks is like all the rest, and then they realize, and on the back, turn it around, Curt, so people can see that it's from
Legal Seafoods.
Legal Seafood. So the whole formation of the fish to the leaf makes a lot of sense, and I thought it's very clever.
It was clever, and it was all part of a ad campaign that Legal Seafoods did in the fall. That was one of the reasons why Roger came on the show, is explain why they were using the 420 code to get your attention, and it aired just before every Celtics game, so I was watching it all the time in the fall. Let's start, Joe, if you don't mind. Let's start with you. Hang on a second. And we don't need her. That's interesting. But anyway, let's start with you, Joe, and get your reaction to what has been everybody uses the word unprecedented. None of us have ever gone through anything like this in our lifetime as far as the COVID-19. As a CEO of a company, not just medical, but also recreational, how difficult has this time been for you and Curaleaf?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been difficult. We've had to adjust our business on the fly and do a lot of things that we're not accustomed to doing. But, I have to say that, having looked back on the last couple of weeks, that I'm incredibly proud of the team and how they've responded. And I think that actually, the fact that we're essential in every state we operate in is a huge validation for our business. So, net, I think that the recognition that cannabis belongs is part of our society for good is a positive step for the industry. Regulators across the country are letting us do things like online ordering, curbside pickup. They're relaxing rules on hiring, a lot of stuff that frankly was unnecessary. So my hope is that as we come through this, some of those things will become a permanent feature of our business, and it'll be a net positive. But obviously it's difficult and everybody's going through challenging times, but I'm an optimist. So I always try to find the silver lining in a bad situation.
Oh, certainly great attitude. We all need that as well. Go ahead, Curt.
I was going to say, you guys have raised billions of dollars, been in the industry from the beginning, seen the whipsaw market. So I have to ask both of you, at this point in time, do you believe Carol Baskin fed her husband to a tiger?
I'm going with yes. She's not. There's no way. He was a food source.
Joe, what do you think? I assume you watched it.
I'm not. I'm only halfway through the season, so okay. I can't give you my conclusion yet. But they all seem pretty nuts, so anything's possible.
Yeah.
Well, we can see the effects of COVID already on the two guys who have raised billions. One looks like the drug dealer from Breaking Bad. The other guy dropped off my pizzas a few hours ago. So its effect.
Go ahead, Curt. I know you have a list of questions you want to ask. I'm giving you the floor.
Sure, I'll go at Bruce first. Obviously, restructuring at your old baby Canopy Growth, 800 million, I think, Canadian, kind of pulling back some of your ideas, basically, you could say, or things you spent money on. Do you look at it and say, ooh, I would have done that, or I would have done that, or is it personal, or when you see kind of Canopy pulling back on some of the things, what goes through your head?
Well, for the most part, I think, the world's changed pretty quickly. And so I think part of the reason Canopy got to be where it was is every time there was an opportunity, we were reacting first or before others identified the need to react. And so it's consistent, right? Do you wish to be in South Africa right now with a bunch of operations? Probably not. How about Colombia? It hasn't played out at all, as the regulators indicated, in the market size. So I think going asset light is a good idea. And when we were looking at Colombia, it was really a hedge on. It was my view that we were never going to transit much cannabis from Colombia to anywhere, but it's cheaper to have a hedge than to be wrong. And so now that market's played out that way, it go that route. As far as the Canadian assets, there's just so much product going to be or is available in the market from people who didn't spend any money on infrastructure to create finished goods. And so they're now at a situation where they have no access to capital. They have a bunch of biomass, basically. So why not essentially buy it cheaper and idle some of the resources? So I think it's kind of it's regrettable for the people who lost their jobs. As far as what is the actual number in real cash down, I think a lot of this accounting write-off does capture a lot of goodwill and other intangibles, and so the numbers I've found look a little bigger than the actual reality of the core cash burden that was used to create the stuff.
And Joe, Bruce brought up a good point. The supply is going to be there. We had run an article on cannabis.net that the Google searches on how to grow weed, how to sell weed are taking off as we hit a recession. Hence, people who need an extra $500 to $800, $1,000 a month are trying to figure out how to sell and grow weed. As a guy who's in multiple states selling legal cannabis, what are your thoughts if we hit this recession and everybody turns on YouTube and tries to start growing illegally and selling illegally?
First of all, I think cannabis is a great plant, and I think that people are going to definitely turn to it more for anxiety and other issues during a time of crisis. We've actually seen that in our own sales, so that's definitely an interesting trend that I think will continue. The reality is in the U.S., the cannabis market's a $100 billion market, roughly, no matter how you slice it. The regulated market's about $12 billion of that right now, so I'm not concerned at all. There's a huge amount of headroom for regulated operators. I think more interestingly, as states recognize the massive budget deficits they have, they're going to look more and more to create tax revenue in the U.S. And that only seems to bode well for future regulations. I'm absolutely confident that New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, states all up and down the East Coast are going to eventually turn to cannabis for tax revenue, because it's just not good public policy anymore to keep this stuff in the black market when it can be tax regulated and add jobs and be a net economic contributor to a state that has a massive budget deficit. I think New York's like a $20 billion hole right now.
So Chris Walsh thought the same thing, that the events of COVID will help federal legalization due to jobs, tax revenue. Do you feel the same way, Bruce?
Yeah, and even things like utilization of real estate, right? What do cannabis companies do? They tend to need to set up shop to produce. They're looking to do that in jurisdictions where there are already less costly buildings, to grow in, so abandoned or derelict warehousing environments. They use retail, and retail is going to be just destroyed after this. So the retail footprint of cannabis is, pretty flexible. So, congratulations, you're now a governor. What are you worried about? You're worried about taxes, employment, and utilization of existing real estate assets. I think cannabis checks every one of those boxes better than any other option they have.
Joe, that must make you feel pretty good, perhaps coming out of this at some point. We get back to some kind of normalcy, whatever that looks like. There seems to be a lot of movement and talk about how the cannabis industry can help the United States economy recover, add jobs, and perhaps with a change of government at the end of this year, perhaps even some movement on the federal level.
Yeah, look, here's what I say. I never try to predict what's going to happen, at the federal level, because it's impossible. What I'm supremely confident in is that every election cycle, we're going to continue to get people going to the ballot box and voting for cannabis. You're going to see Arizona pass adult use this fall. You're going to see New Jersey. You're going to see 3 or 4 more states adopt medical. The people are going to keep speaking over and over again. So, the legislature is obviously way out of step already with the American people. I think this crisis will hopefully move them more in that direction. But, we'll see.
Curt?
What excites you most, if we have some sort of vision of the future? Is it federal legalization, being able to ship it from a Curaleaf, or what do you see as, like, if everything broke the right way, would get you the most excited about the future?
Yeah, certainly full federal legalization at some point is the hope. Being able to have a very highly optimized supply chain where we're only growing in a couple of parts of the country. Being a vertical operator state by state is obviously inefficient. So that's the goal. To be candid, I don't think that's around the corner. I think that may take a little bit more time. The United States is still 50 states, as we're learning through this, through this crisis, with 50 governors that are making policy. So, I think you'll see a states' rights bill first, and that will allow states to make their own policy legally. I think a full federal legalization is still some time off. There's way too many flyover conservative states in the middle of the country that don't have medical policies for to think that a full federal bill will happen anytime soon.
And Bruce, you've moved on from this petty cannabis stuff. You're now the mushroom king. How has COVID affected MindMed and what you're doing with research? Is it going to be better on the other side for research into like psychedelics that you're working on?
Well, I'd say research generally, right? So part of the thing I was thinking about when Joe was answering is, MindMed is doing clinical trials or research trials now in Perth, Australia. So when you're in Australia, you're doing it. I don't know. I find that there's quite a bit of a similarity between an Australian human, a Canadian human, and an American human. And so if you have a data set that is done on a really equivalent basis of an FDA, but you could not necessarily have done it as efficiently or maybe even at all with the FDA, when that data turns up in America and it is convincing in the case of the trial MC18, where 18MC, I should say, where we're looking at a derivative of ibogaine as a way to basically get addiction minimized, that'll be a pretty, I think pretty big evidence people can turn to. But I think you're going to find that Germany right now is cleaned up from COVID quite a bit, and they're running things like using cannabinoids and certain transdermal delivery mechanisms to try and really effectively treat things like psoriasis. And in Canada, prior to COVID, there were trials running on how do aged care homes deal with the 4 primary ails of being older. You know, your anxiety, your mobility, your inability to sleep, and diminished appetite. And so I think you're going to start to see data land in the US from around the world that's going to be a very hard argument for the people opposed to it to stick with. And so I'm mainly excited about this fact that we're on a big global planet that doesn't have equal regulatory frameworks, because then you can actually have data to change the bad frameworks. And I think we'd all agree right now it is suboptimal in the US.
Joe, what can you learn from the Canadian experience as far, and I understand obviously having a federal legalization country north of the United States is not the same thing that you have here in Massachusetts or in any of the other states that you operate in, but are there things that you can learn from our brethren in Canada?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, but before I do that, I just want to, pick up where Bruce left off, because I think it's an important point. And Bruce is without a doubt a visionary, and I believe the new area is as promising, if not more, than cannabis. Let's be honest. In the United States, the pharmaceutical lobby is massive and deeply entrenched, and they don't want this evidence out there, right? I mean, we have well-entrenched, powerful, well-funded people that are going to try to suppress cannabis. And so I think Bruce is right. Research around the world will hopefully overwhelm all the propaganda, but that may take a little bit of time. With respect to the markets, I've been saying this, I'm sure Bruce will agree that the U.S. is just structurally different than Canada. Bruce can speak more, obviously fluently about Canada, but in my observations, the difference we have in the U.S. is we really control the supply chain. And, as a result, controlling your distribution point, being able to brand, controlling your pricing, not through regime, really makes our businesses more advantaged. So I think where, our friends to the north had a full federal program, the problem with that program is it was implemented by the government. And so, that's always a challenge. And I don't think it's gone as well as people had hoped. A lot of the operators up there, frankly, got shortchanged by the government. Rolled it out, how slowly they've rolled it out, Cannabis 2.0, all the differentiated products. The store rollouts have been a mess in Ontario. So it's been a real market up there. The irony is in the U.S. we have no federal cooperation, but we have states that allow us to do what we need to do. Frankly, it's been better for us.
Gotcha. Hey, I'm just going to jump in here and play the role of the show host for a second. You're watching or listening to We Talk Now with Curt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net, and yours truly, Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. This is a podcast and also a vodcast. The podcast, of course, distributed in all the popular podcast distribution networks like iTunes and Spotify. And we also want to thank CLNS Media for being a pro cannabis media site. They're a sports-centric podcast aggregation site. We certainly encourage you to check them out. And also we want to help and thank our supporters from Rev Clinics, a local dispensary here. Maybe we'll get a chance to actually talk to the Curaleaf people to join the Rev Clinics alongside here at some point. But we have been with Rev Clinics since the very beginning of my podcast, which was In the Weeds when it first started. Now, of course, having Curt on alongside as We Talk Now co-host, we've taken a completely different step, a big step. And we also want to thank our friends at Weejits.com. And if you haven't checked out the Maze Pipe from Weejits.com, we certainly encourage you to do this because it will cool your smoking sensation. And we all know that there is a virus out there that loves to attack the respiratory system. So we're not saying it can cure it. We're just saying it can ease the influx of smoke into the human lungs. And if you do go to Weejits.com, Weed Talk 2020 gives you a little bit of a discount promo so that you can get yourselves a couple of percentage points off that. Now, back to the discussion. And now I'm going to toss it over to Curt, who's ready for another question. Curt?
Sure. Joe, you guys have a big and growing operation in Florida. Great market. Just what were you thinking? The spring break kids, the partying, the people mingling with them a few weeks ago. as a businessman owning businesses, cannabis businesses in Florida, what was going through your head as people were showing that on TV and protesting it? And any thoughts just having all those businesses down there?
Look, here's what I would say. I don't envy any governor or the president trying to deal with this. These are massively uncertain times, just no playbook for this stuff. So it's really hard to overly criticize. From my perspective, the Florida Department of Health has been incredible partners through this crisis. They've deemed us essential. They're working with us to make sure that we can serve our customers. So, our experience in Florida has been incredibly positive. What's interesting about Florida is that there's been a mass exodus of New Yorkers down in Florida. They're almost overrunning the state right now. So I think it's really muddling the data and the spread of the virus, because there's such a mix up of the population. It'd be interesting to see if it was just Floridians alone, how the state would fare, particularly given the warm weather and a more outdoor lifestyle type of climate. But we won't know, because unfortunately they didn't shut off the spigot fast enough, and the state's just overrun with people from the Northeast escaping the cold and the virus.
You're bang on. I don't know anybody in New York I deal with that has a place in Florida that isn't in it.
Right. It's really crazy.
And Bruce, you had mentioned earlier, Canada doesn't seem to have the flare and the kind of the wave coming through. What did they do better or earlier, or what are you guys doing now that's what's so effective compared to the US?
Well, we do have one massive advantage, that our country is a little bit larger geographic, and there's only 1 in 10 for every American. So isolation is kind of natural, right? We're already pretty far apart. But I think just the whole thing, this is week 5 for me, where they've been pushing, just stay away. And I think that's pretty much been it. I wouldn't say that there's been anything else materially different. We didn't have a metro center like in New York that went off in a big way right away. It started in Vancouver, mainly, a little bit, then moved to Quebec and to Montreal. But when you get a place like New York, which becomes sort of the center of the action, that is I don't know how you contain that when you think about the traffic through that city. And I averted being there, frankly, randomly. I was out marketing our SPAC on the, what day did they have the headline on the Wall Street Journal saying end of an 11-year bull run and pandemic declared? I think that was the 11th or the 12th. That's the day I began marketing my SPAC. Genius. There was no one else on the road.
Yeah.
But we were supposed to go the next day to New York, and we did them all by the phone, and we ended up doing 4 or 5 more days of marketing by phone. And frankly, if you have a chance to have basically a buy-side person who's stuck at their home do a call and or Zoom with you when you're stuck at yours, way better than being in their office. Like, we actually got to work through the whole deck, have a focused Q&A, and it didn't end in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. It was like every one of our calls went really well that way. So I'd say, Canada's been buttoned down, but the reality is until America as well, it doesn't matter if Austria or Germany is doing terrific, who they're going to do business with. They need the US back, so there's a counterparty. And so we're looking forward to you guys getting all healthy and well.
Yeah. So
for those that aren't familiar with what a SPAC is, special investment vehicle, and 150 million, or it was even more. What are you looking to invest in? You're raising kind of a shell to invest in hemp, and tell people if everybody's looking maybe for Bruce to invest in them. What are you looking for?
Well, so it even when we were doing it at Canopy, I'm more of an interested person in terms of what the potential of the whole plant, and is if you do any digging in about the history of hemp, it's the most bizarre thing that it actually somehow by the 70s got banned, because to the best of my knowledge, some of your very early currency was premised upon the necessary fiber from it, and your first flags were made by it, and Mr. Ford had a fleet of cars powered by it. And so what we were looking at is, how do we take regions which didn't ban it and prohibit it, and the intellectual property that results from that? So if you went to, say, the Netherlands, France, those jurisdictions, unlike Canada and the US, didn't overreact and ban hemp, which meant kind of in a not super spotlight, they continue to work away and say, well, how do we turn this into what it could be? And if you do the analysis, there's about 225 categories of existing products that could be rapidly disrupted by hemp. And that can be the fiber, it can be the herd, it can be the protein, it can be ultimately potentially the CBD. But our whole model was not CBD first, but CBD last, and monetize the plant in a way that makes sense. And so I'm hoping in the 2021 agricultural season in the US, by that point in time, we're going to have processing facilities that will allow people to be on the fields farming a diversity types of hemp. And we'll own all the assets that convert it into the value add elements that disrupt HDPE pellets for plastics, to carbon fiber combos, to things that would have the ability to convey electricity and de-weight electric cars. And so the plant is way more exciting if you plant the right ones and don't turn it into CBD first and only.
Let me rate to ask Joe something. Joe, at Curaleaf, what's the breakdown, or what do you see it on the hemp derived CBD, or just people coming in saying, I just want CBD, not the THC?
Well, I mean, we operate regulated dispensaries primarily, so the massive overweight is people that want THC. But I will say that a lot of our ratio products, so products that do have CBD in it, are also very popular. A small percentage of our customers come in for CBD only, but that's because you can buy it now in the gas station. I mean, CBD is
we have
everywhere.
a story about. Don't buy it there, by the way.
No, I hear you, but I mean, it's like the CBD market is so overcrowded that I agree with Bruce. I mean, if you're farming hemp for CBD, it's probably a challenging proposition. But the plant does show huge promise for the environment and for so many other reasons that I also do believe in that crop deeply. Ironically, I think at some point, CBD might wind up being the source of all cannabinoids. That could be the interest. It's so cheap to farm, and it's very clear ways to CBD and the other compounds in that plant into THC and other products that may be sort of the mother crop that all THC and everything else comes from at some point down the line. So it's so early days in the cannabis industry, and that's the thing I want to emphasize. All the stuff Bruce is talking about around the science and everything. I mean, this is like the first at bat in the first inning. We don't know anything. We are just barely scratching the surface of what these plants can do to the human condition. So there's a long course of discovery we're going to go through together.
And that makes me wonder, Joe, the first time we met, if this is the scratching the surface in the first inning of things, I think we met in a WeWork space in New York City.
Yeah, that's right.
If I recall correctly, because we were having a discussion, which bank do you like? And I said, well, that's not a possible answer. There are none that you should like, but which one can be find of potential utility? And it was a room big enough to fit Boris, you, me, and I think one other guy, but it wasn't much bigger than that. It was
that's right. We
really
had a beer. Yeah, that was probably 2.5 years ago now. It was a good while ago.
Yeah. Now you're doing pretty well, but I wouldn't want to see how that WeWork space is going to turn out.
Just going to say that. You do it better than WeWork already.
Yeah, we've since moved out of that. We moved to 420 Lexington Avenue, believe it or not.
Nice.
Yeah. So we have a New York office there. But, I'm sure you agree, Bruce. I mean, this is just the early days. There's just no conclusions to be drawn. You can't really pick winners and losers, and yet there's just so much on the horizon, which is what gets me excited. That's why I love the industry, because I think there's so much untapped potential and promise in it.
Yeah.
Joe,
Quit interrupting me, man.
Hey, Bono called. He's looking for the edge. Hold on.
I'd say, like, Joe, I think part of what you're experiencing is what I experienced, that once you build the biggest one that's moving the fastest, it's hard because a lot of folks in the sector probably would prefer to see you trip because that makes them think they're doing better. But you guys are big enough now and doing well enough that, you've got the burden of being the leader. And so I like the way you're speaking about the regulators, right? There's always a chance to throw negative, and you did not throw negative ever. You reflected positively, and usually it's true.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bruce, like the reality is, consistently, I don't believe that the other operators are our competition right now. This is $100 billion market. It's, we represent 12 billion today. There's enough, food on the table for all of us to eat. So, we try to cooperate as much as we can with other operators, give them a hand, support operators in wholesale and markets. We support GTI in New Jersey and these Cresco in other states. And, we believe that the industry is only going to thrive if we all work together and really try to get more favorable regulations. And so we definitely feel the burden in being a leader and trying to create a better cannabis industry. But, we don't really fear other companies as our competitors. And we frankly hope they all do well. It's just a very big industry. And I think that we, as an industry, we need to demonstrate to regulators that there's professionalism. We can do this the right way. We can make safe products. And that's going to break down all of the bullshit and the propaganda we've been up against for the last, 100 years in our country.
Yeah.
Well, we're going through something now that none of us have ever gone through. And I know, Joe, you mentioned food on the table. I'm guessing most of us are not having issues with that, while we have hundreds of thousands of people actually having those issues. I want to ask you guys, you're all working out of your houses. How's that work-life balance working for you guys in your households these last couple of weeks that we've all been kind of holed up here?
Go ahead, Joe. You actually have a job.
This is the segment where I'll bring my wife in to tell me how much she enjoys me being home 24 hours a day. I suspect it's not very good. I went from never being home to being home way too much. My kids are like, "Who the hell is this guy? Why is he telling us?" So we're all kind of struggling. The home front is probably a bigger challenge than my job right now.
And you're working out of your house full time, right?
Yeah, I mean, you just literally, we have to respect the governor's orders. We have to set an example. So we're going out for groceries, and that's about it. For me, the people that are the real, obviously, heroes in our company, the people on the front lines every day interacting with customers and, working through these uncertain times. We've got 57 dispensaries around the country and people showing up to work every day to deliver products. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't thank all of our employees for doing that and for, getting out there and carrying on the mission. It's now more important than ever. So, frankly, I wish I could do it. No fun being home.
Yeah. And the way I did is when I had an office, every Monday I have 11 phone calls with different people from Europe through different parts of the US and Canada and finish on the West Coast. And then I began by adding a call to a party in Australia, which is at 6:30 p.m. my time on Monday. So I always had Monday to get a view of what was happening, and I've kept that. But like today was Thursday, and it involved me using what I've done, Joe, is I live in a property, it's about 2 acres and has trees around the edge. And some of them are not as healthy as they should be. So I allow myself 1 tank of fuel in my chainsaw per day. And I go out and I cut up the trees. And at this time of year in Canada, none of them have a leaf. So if I'm feeling like I need another tree, I just deem that one unhealthy and down it can come. But that's kind of been it. And if I laugh when you say, Joe, like, you're never around, then you're around too much. Last year, we had about 130 days on the road and a whole bunch of red eyes going to Germany and stuff. I've now been in my house for 5 weeks. In fact, this room, I've spent more time on this call with you guys in this room than I had in the prior 17 years.
All right.
So this has become my office. It's actually an arcade that's a pinball game behind me, and this is sitting on a old school bar top Pac-Man game. But it is really, I think the effect of things like Zoom and this and a bunch of the businesses I'm involved in, they are now going to probably shrink their actual physical office space to about 1/3 of what we were carrying before. And there'll be gatherings, but there won't be offices all the time for everybody. And there'll be cycles where we get together rather than carry a huge burden for real estate we don't need now.
Hey, Bruce, I was going to actually ask you that because I was feeling the same way. It's really amazing. I really believe this will change how companies operate. Even in our business, we have people traveling all around the country all the time. I think we're all saying to ourselves now, does that make sense? Is that even necessary with technology? We need offices to do stuff the way we used to? I mean, I think it's going to force us into thinking about that stuff more clearly.
Well, and you think about it, you and I are not going to have a sit-down meeting until there's a vaccine. But I bet we talk again before that.
Right.
So the effect of this is that we're going to get used to doing things over the next 6-12 months. This isn't just like the last 5 weeks. So I'm fairly upbeat about some of the tech I'm involved with because of that. I feel quite down on things like office space. Like, I don't know how WeWork's going to come out the other side of this. They have hard contracts is really their only advantage, right? When you were a member, whatever they call it, they set the hooks into you pretty hard. And so other than that, I think a lot of people are just going to give up on the spaces.
There was a power of the face-to-face meeting that's been now replaced by this kind of technology. Is that going to change the deals that are made?
I don't know. I bet you're still going to meet face-to-face to do all the final deals, but getting started on something historically has been a problem of trying to figure out when you can get together to start on it.
Right. And certainly there's not going to be a handshake deal anymore. I mean,
no. I think to continue what they were saying, I think this technology is going to get real interesting. One is Joe and I live in the Boston area, traffic, could we get it to where we take 25% of the cars rotating, maybe big companies take a Tuesday and the next big company to alleviate traffic, which would help the environment. And secondarily, higher education, as I know Joe's got kids. Bruce has kids there. That is this the breaking point for the $70,000 a year colleges, which has gone up faster than anything, even inflation? That is there something coming where this is the tipping point? Video conferencing, maybe half your time at a dorm or school, but the prices now come down to where you can get a legitimate college education or a post degree through video and through online classes. It's much more legitimate after COVID. So yeah, who knows what happens, to some of these big industries in a year or two. So.
Yeah, Curt, I had a conversation with a buddy of mine whose kid goes to USC at the tune of $67,000 a year. And we were talking about, we all recognize education is being delivered in an antiquated way right now, right? It's just, you could have a professor and 3,000 kids take a course over a computer. And so my kids aren't college age yet. They're a few years out, but I'm hoping it's actually a shift in the way that education is delivered. And it becomes more economical because, frankly, it's a bit of a relic of the past now, the way it's being done.
I got 2 young kids too. You and me both, Joe. We're going, just bring that MOOC project from Stanford. Make it $10,000 a year for college. We're in.
That's it.
And of course, I'm the old guy in this room right now, but I am teaching using Zoom at Emerson College this semester. And I've got 30 out of 31 kids every Monday and Wednesday, noon to 1:30. And to be honest, if you really do understand how teaching is done, and I'm a big proponent of experiential learning. I want to give assignments. I want these kids to be reading and writing, reading aloud, writing, speaking, all those things that have disappeared from that face-to-face in our own human communication. I put those into my courses because, they'll do it. First of all, they're bored out of their minds. They're happy to make the time to go to class. And second, it's the kind of assignment that you need to have beyond just this. We know that the next few years, we are going to see a lot of changes. And I think everyone in this room agrees that the cannabis industry certainly is poised to take advantage of some of the new ways people are going to be doing business, some of the new products that will be entering the marketplace, and also, how to create jobs. The industry's a little baby. You guys have been talking about how we're just at the very beginning of it. Well, we all recognize you can tax it. You can bring jobs in. There's so many positives to it now. And if everybody would just get away from this stigma. Are you still dealing with the stigma on a daily basis in your business, or has that?
Every day.
Every day.
Every single day. Every day. Look at Massachusetts. I mean, we have a governor that doesn't recognize that cannabis should be as legal as alcohol right now. I mean, it's just one example.
Right.
So Joe, we've written about this a lot, where Governor Baker's decision was we don't want New Yorkers coming over the border right at the New York-Mass line. To me, with the ordering systems that are out there could have been a compromise. I like to call it the Five Guys compromise, where you can order ahead, have it taken out to your car. Couldn't we have found some common ground to get rec? I hope you vote yes on that. But Does Baker have anything to stand on as far as saying, well, the lines are too long at rec? We all know that's his fault for dragging his feet for a couple years, but you can't go back now. We have a virus here. Why couldn't we get a solution? Why couldn't we get a compromise on the, hey, stay in your car, we'll bring it to you, we'll let rec go, but don't stand in line?
Kurt, there in Massachusetts, there are 1,600 liquor stores. We estimate there are 350,000 transactions happening every day for alcohol. 40 stores in the Commonwealth can't operate safely. Just, I don't believe it. Everybody gets ID checked. You can very easily limit it to people that are residents of the Commonwealth. The reality is it's just what we've been dealing with, that cannabis has not been accepted. It's not being recognized as part of the mainstream. And so it's easy to make those decisions.
One of my biggest beefs with this whole thing, guys, and I don't know if you've ever listened to the podcast, but I talk about there's no public service announcement. The only stories that the media, traditional media here runs are the negative stories about the industry. There's no positive how cannabis has changed my life, how cannabis has saved my life stories. Acreage tried to run one during the Super Bowl last year, and CBS nixed it. That spot that they ran had 3 incredible stories about how cannabis has saved, I believe one was a veteran's life, one had cancer. I mean, there are stories out there, but there's no balance in the reporting of it, because you guys know if it bleeds, it leads in media. But there are so many compelling human interest stories, and they're not being told. Frustrations for you guys not to see a public service campaign?
For me, I think the bias indicates that there's still an opportunity that's bigger than allowing everyone in, right? A lot of the major corporations stay away because of the perceived negativeness. So I think it gives guys like Joe and myself a chance to keep building businesses while that bias is annoying. It's actually kind of like a barrier to a bunch of rational actors who should come in. As far as the media coverage, what I found, so I've been watching everything from how's the view in Ohio so that doctors can have better access to prescribing without having to see people, to what does Ontario do, which is they destigmatize cannabis because it's federally and state legal. They start opening stores and then they close the recreational stores for about 10 days, which were the 10 best days, I'm sure, for the illicit trade, because now you've destigmatized something and told people now that you got used to it, you got to go buy it from the guy in the puffy coat. So I see weird moves like that, but I continually see progress. And when I say that, this government that I'm talking about in Ontario didn't necessarily want to have the stores open, but there was enough of an outcry to say, no, it has to happen, that they went back on their word and changed their position. And so I'm kind of curious, Joe, a lot of times I'm hearing, obviously seeing curbside, all these things, but what about format? Like when I think of places like New York or Minnesota, it's not just access, it's what you get to buy.
Right.
Are you having good discussions where regulators are sort of looking at or thinking about that a bit more progressively in this weird state?
I think it's a good question, Bruce. It's probably a little too early to tell, but I would say that I'm encouraged that more form factors will come in. New York's a good example. If you look at New York, there's 20 million people in New York, right? Same amount of population is almost the exact same rules, except factors in New York are a fraction of what they are in Florida. So you see this massive growth in the market, right? You have flower, you have vapes, you have concentrates in Florida, and you have 5 SKUs in New York that don't include flower, can't compete with the guy in the puffy coat. But I think that we've made some progress. We launched the first chewable in New York last quarter, so that's a progress. We launched a ground flower product late last year, and so we're definitely having small gains. But I think more form factors will come in, particularly as people think about the COVID impact on people's lung health. I think that's a strong argument for allowing other form factors like topicals, edibles, and different forms of administration. But we'll see. Again, I'm all optimistic, but it's progress is never linear, and it's just not fast enough for.
What about like labs being a constraint? Are you finding any flexibility in terms of self-testing or limiting the total obligation of testing?
No, we have not seen any relaxation of testing. But, what I think some of the most positive and encouraging signs are that, again, there's a recognition now by many of these governments. People really rely on these products. Cancer patients can't go a month without getting these products. And so I definitely feel encouraged in that way. The biggest shame, in my opinion, about, what happened in here in Massachusetts is that, there are a lot of people, including veterans in particular, that use the adult use channel to buy cannabis legally. And those people are all now shut off from the program. And, in the United States, 20 veterans commit suicide every day. Millions of veterans are addicted to opioid. Mental health is a huge issue in the veterans community. And there's a complete lack of regard for, that population in our state. And so, on one hand, you have progress, and on the other hand, you find yourself massively frustrated, with the lack of recognition.
Yeah, and if VapeGate taught us nothing or anything, it should be that the safe channel is the regulated channel. As soon as you close it, you've basically enhanced the risk for people.
Yeah, so, there was a study that came out. Sorry, Bruce, to interrupt you, but there's a study that came out a little while ago that showed people that had serious illnesses during that vape crisis was like 10-1 in states without legal cannabis. So it was very clearly coming from the channel, not the legal channel. There has been no evidence that it ever came out of the legal channel. And so, by banning vapes in Massachusetts for a couple of months, all you did was force people right back to the source of the problem. And we're doing the exact same thing again.
Absolutely. Curt?
Let me ask you, what's one thing when this thing gets lifted that you want to do? What do you miss the most? Give me a couple things, whether it's personal business, that you want to go do when they say it's all clear. Go ahead, Bruce.
I like eating in a restaurant, just going with a group and socializing. As much as it's great to have, we get halfway through breakfast and we start the discussion of what's for dinner currently, but I just find the whole process of getting together with a group of people and having dinner and enjoying the evening. I didn't realize how much that was an important thing.
Have you done a Zoom meeting, Zoom dinner with any friends yet? Yes.
Yeah, and it does. Sometimes you forget the Zoom's on and everybody's scrambling around for stuff, and it comes back. And those will be memorable events, and they're fun. But just going for dinner with a group of people and being at a decent restaurant and having a couple of hours where the time passes, that's something that I look forward to again.
I miss sports.
Joe?
How about you?
I'm the same as Bruce. The human interaction and being able to just share intimate moments with people and have conversations, that's the thing I miss. I think that's probably true for a lot of people. You don't realize how, connected we are to each other until you can't be. And then you're like, shit, I really, even going to the office, I just miss being around people in the office and, banter and all that. It's pretty, kids all day. It's not that mentally stimulating, frankly.
On a personal note, is it much easier to be locked away with your family? You're sitting on that huge bale of marijuana you're sitting on, or the huge bag of mushrooms Bruce has off camera. Does that help?
I'll trade Bruce some cannabis for some mushrooms.
There you go.
Well, I will say one of the things that happened fortunately is Canopy launched their Tweet and Tonics about 3 weeks ago, and they're now starting to fill the channel. And so these are actually amazing beverages. They only have 2 milligrams. They're crystal clear, and they have no calories, no carbohydrates. And so someone said, Bruce, you look like you're a little thinner. Are you exercising a lot? I said, well, that may be a contributing factor, but I think no calories in your beverage is also a positive.
I thought the COVID-19 was like the freshman 15. I went the other way, so.
Me too, unfortunately. A lot of stress eating.
Yeah, seriously, right?
Well, guys, I got to tell you, listening to both Bruce and Joe talk to each other was kind of fascinating to me. I think both of you are leaders of this industry in so many ways. I really think that the leadership of the industry is in good hands. And I want to thank you guys for that. You know, I'm the oldest guy in the room. I'm the guy who's at risk for COVID-19. I get it. But I've lived a long time to finally see this happening in my native state. I never thought I'd see 12 championships in 20 years in Massachusetts and have cannabis legal. It's just a crazy, crazy time. But I want to thank both of you for taking the time out, time away from your families. I know how tough that must have been for both of you, especially at bedtime for anybody who has any young kids, right? To join us here for this discussion. And
Joe's like, honey, no, I'm still on.
Yeah, keep it rolling, Jim. I got another hour.
Yeah, yes, it's a 2-hour show tonight.
That's right. Well, we could do this again in a month, guys, because Curt and I do get together and do these things, excuse me, every month. And we look forward to having you on anytime. I like to wave the flag so that the cannabis industry has a place to go to tell their own stories. And we support that effort here at Pro Cannabis Media. And I know Curt does as well. And Bruce, you liked us when we first met back in September, too, in Jamaica.
Yeah, no, and thanks for organizing this. I don't think Joe and I would have gotten around to getting connected properly again. So this has been very beneficial. Thanks, guys.
Sure. And speaking of Jamaica, Bruce, of course, I still have my Rastaman hat and dreadlocks going here. I only pull it out now when I'm talking to you for some reason or going to a party of some kind. So
I feel like I'm on the Brady Bunch show. Is which square is not a drug dealer? Because I can't tell on this side.
Hey, and for those of you who are listening and watching, we also have 15 more minutes, a bonus conversation with Chris Walsh from MJBiz Daily. They just cut a deal with LeafWire. And of course, they are always hosting the largest cannabis convention in Las Vegas in December. And for now, that is still on. And let's hope we can all meet down there in December of 2020 and continue this conversation. Well, here we are with a bonus part of Weed Talk Now. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm Curt Dalton from Cannabis.net.
And joining us as well is Chris Walsh, who is the CEO of MJBiz Daily. And Chris, welcome to Weed Talk Now.
Thanks for having me on again. I appreciate it.
No, happy to have you here. Last time we talked, we were in the middle of MJBizCon, the biggest one. I believe it was your 6th in the Las Vegas Convention Center. Man, does it seem like it was only a few months ago? A lot has gone on between December and now, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we used to call, we have a term pot years in the cannabis industry since we started nine years ago. And every 2 or 3 months, as anyone in this industry knows, feels like a year or two. I can tell you that has been accelerated with all the chaos going on now. So every day feels like 3 or 4 months now, and every month feels like a year. So yeah, a lot has changed.
In fact, even this past week or the last few weeks, a few things have changed with MJBiz Daily. I understand that you've formed some kind of a promotional partnership with LeafWire, our friend Peter Vogel out there. And you guys in Colorado, man, you guys know how to make deals, huh?
Yeah, we've been talking with Peter and LeafWire for a while, trying to figure out if there was an opportunity to work together and how. And we were able to find a nice path forward that really is going to, especially in this environment, help professionals and executives and leaders in the industry better connect with each other and get the resources and information that we provide to kind of help them navigate this situation and grow their businesses and keep their businesses afloat and really find their tribe together in different segments of the industry in what is now a digital world.
Chris, what's the plans? I'm sure you're making contingency plans. You guys have had layoffs just like everybody else in the industry. But if Vegas can't happen in the fall, is there a virtual plan or a hosting at a different time and place? Kind of what is your long-term planning if we get that far?
Yeah, we had some furloughs recently as we kind of navigate this current situation. We don't really have any idea of what's around the corner, like most of you out there. And so we're really moving cautiously now to make sure that, we can continue to be the leading, resource for connections and information in the industry and that we're going to come out on the other side of this in an even stronger position. As we look forward, we've run a bunch of different scenarios for what can happen. A lot of this is out of our control. It's out of everyone's control right now. And again, with that uncertainty, we have various ways we're going to move forward to continue, serving as this resource for the industry. So we're moving ahead with MJBizCon now in December. And, we're going to start allotting space to exhibitors on the floor soon. There's still a lot of interest, not only in the US, but from companies in China and globally. And I know that sounds odd right now in the situation we're in, but the cannabis industry is starving for information, for connections to do business together. And so we hope to bring that, we were going to bring that to people one way or the other. So no matter what, we're going to have a digital and virtual component to MJBizCon. We have some plans we're going to announce here in the next couple of days about our virtual event strategy and what we're doing on the editorial side, to provide everyone content and information. And as I said, connection. So yeah, we're pursuing multiple paths, and hopefully we're going to see everyone in Vegas in December. And if something prevents us from doing that, we have great backup plans to still give everyone that value in just a different format.
You're a guy that travels around the world. I think I've sat next to you at probably shows in 4 countries now we covered. All of us are feeling locked in, but what's it been like for you? Because you are on the road. You're a road warrior. How has it been hard at first? You enjoyed it for a little while. Now you're ready to get outside, or where are you at?
Yeah, it's been tough. And Curt, I've seen you at many events in different countries. Like a lot of people, had a lot of big plans. Was going to take my daughter to Disney World. And by the way, my daughter's really upset with me, so I hope she doesn't, on this. I took her computer away, and she's young and has been on the computer a lot, so she's very angry at me right now. So apologies if there's any interruption.
Welcome to the club, buddy.
Exactly. We were going to go to Disney World, but for work, I was going to go to Brazil. We were going to we had an event in Denmark. We had lots of travel coming up, both personal and for our business. And, traveling is my personal passion, and it's been fortunate that I've been able to do that for business as well. So this has been hard for me on that end, but I always just kind of ground myself and center myself and say, a lot of things could be worse. There's a lot of people in bad situations. I don't know anyone personally who's been affected by the virus. And so I thank, my lucky stars for that. And as hard as it is, it's something I can adapt to. Obviously, because it could be worse.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, Chris, the cannabis industry alone, without the COVID-19 virus, is challenging enough. Now you throw in the fact that nobody in the cannabis industry is going to be able to get any kind of federal stimulation money or anything like that. And here in Massachusetts, where we record this program, we produce this program, the governor, Charlie Baker, once again won another battle in court this week, where the judge has actually upheld his ban of adult use cannabis recreational stores from opening during this stay-at-home order. Have you ever thought that the challenge would be including all those things that have to go on with cannabis because it's still federally illegal? Now you throw in the virus. I mean, how much more can you guys handle?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. This industry is resilient. Since we started in 2011, the amount of pressures and stresses and unexpected developments and challenges this industry has faced have probably been as much, if not more, than almost any industry out there. And what I've learned over time is it's resilient, and it comes back, and it comes back stronger. And the silver lining in a lot of this is that although we see what's happening in Massachusetts, which is very unfortunate, a lot of states have basically said cannabis businesses are essential. And if you just think about that in the context of this, it's pretty amazing when you think it's illegal federally and there's still a stigma around it. And, there's still opposition to it or people that are afraid of it. And you have all these states that are saying, no, there's only a couple businesses that are allowed to remain open. And one of them is medical marijuana dispensaries, and in some cases recreational. That is pretty amazing. And that gives me hope that when we come out of this, there's going to be a lot of pain, and they can't get, businesses can't get federal stimulus money. Some of them can't sell. They don't have as big of a market. Consumer spending is going to drop. It's going to be painful for the cannabis industry too. I think the industry is going to fare better than a lot of other industries. Doesn't mean it's going to fare great, but it's going to fare better. And so those companies that can survive this can adapt, that embrace the change and understand that business has to be done differently, and they've got to get through this period. I think the industry as a whole is going to be good, in a really good position to come roaring out of the gates when we get out of this mess. And I do think it is going to help legalization and acceptance efforts. I absolutely believe that. down the road, because we're going to need to jolt this economy. And people, governors and federal politicians are going to be looking at where can we do that. This could be one of the ways.
Well,
That's exactly the next question I had based on an article we wrote for you, but you just covered that. So you must have been, this isn't your first rodeo, I can tell. As I described, for people that don't know who you are in your magazine, you're the Wall Street Journal of cannabis, and you really have your pulse on worldwide. What's some of the good things you think will happen? Obviously, you just covered legalization. What can we tell the cannabis industry from your perch about the stuff to look forward to and what you think will happen?
Yeah, I mean, to reiterate, no one can predict the future. I've learned in this industry, you can be very foolish very quickly by trying to say what's around the corner. But having been involved intimately in this industry for a very long time, almost a decade, I am very optimistic that it will lead to federal change faster than if this had not happened. And it may convince other states to legalize again as we come out, as they're looking to help the economy. So that's one, potentially very big silver lining. And then, in every crisis, you have to look for the opportunities. And so the companies that do that and the leadership teams that are able to get their head around that things aren't going to go back to where they were 2 months ago, and it's all going to be the same. You got to think about where the puck is going down the road and position yourself to be there. So I think the industry and companies can come out of this stronger. And that's what I'm trying to do with our company. Jury's still out on if we can all navigate through this, but I think there could be some good fundamental changes to how businesses operate, and the innovation that has to occur in a time like this, so you stay afloat. And then when you get out of this, that innovation carries forward, and the industry might be doing things that it wasn't doing before that are really beneficial for customers, for patients. And one example is, some cities or states have loosened restrictions or bans on delivery. So when we look down the road, if those stick, that's a whole new business model and a whole new way to get the product to people and a whole new connection you can make with patients and customers. And, if that works okay, that might be another silver lining in this, is that will be permanent in some areas and may become a bigger part of the industry in general, which again, I think is a good thing to have more options, creates more business opportunities. So, I do think cannabis, this isn't going to affect the long-term demand for it. Consumers will have less money, so we all have to prepare for the fact that even though they really want it or need it, they might not have the funds to get it or to get as much. So if we can weather this storm, circle the wagons, get through it, this might even increase demand down the road and get new people into the fold, because they are at home and they don't know what to do with themselves. On the recreational side, maybe some people are saying, I'm going to try this. I don't know what else to do. I'm just sitting here. On the medical side, maybe they're more willing to try this to help them. So that's how I'm viewing it.
Is there any way that the industry itself can perhaps come up with some way to help and aid some of the little mom and pops and the little grow farms and the little people that are in the cannabis industry? We all know that there are investors out there, and we know that investment is always a gamble, especially with a federally illegal product. But is there any movement at all of a private bailout fund out there for the cannabis folks, the little guys?
That is a great idea. And I'm not aware, and doesn't mean it's not happening, as I've had to retrench and focus on our business. I'm not aware of any big efforts to do that. I think, unfortunately, we're hit with a double whammy. I think if this was a recession or a downturn, I think we'd all gladly welcome that versus the current situation where there's a recession/downturn and the uncertainty and unprecedented nature of this right now, where no one knows what's around the corner. No one can predict safely what's going to happen in 4 weeks, in 2 months, in 4 months, in 18 months. And so I think it's very hard for people, even if you're doing okay financially, even if you have a big buffer, to commit to something like that. And so I think it's a noble cause, and maybe if we can get some leaders in a room to talk through that, we can come up with an idea. I know now the sense is everyone's, again, if you have money to spend, you are protecting it and you're sitting on it. And as much as you want to help others and smaller businesses and those that might be struggling to survive, even if you're an investor, everyone is afraid right now. And so, maybe as we go down this and get some more clarity, an idea like that can take off.
What's your opinion? You mentioned not knowing, and you're right, no one knows the future. There seems to be two trains of thought. One is we're going to open up around May 1st and start playing, basketball and football games and see how it goes. The other is we'll see you in 2022. Just personally, are you leaning, or what do you think is the more future look that you would agree to?
Yeah, and as the CEO of our company, I have to look at all possible scenarios. So I've been very, very close to this and trying to figure out how we should go forward. So, for us, it's preparing for anyway. I don't think, that things are going to magically open up in the next couple of weeks. The problem in the US is, every state has handled it differently. So people look to Europe and say, oh, well, Germany's kind of opening back up in Italy, but you have to compare Europe to the United States. If Europe operate as a group like this, it would look far different. And so the US, while states are going to operate that way, it's not going to be like the US opens back up like in Italy or Germany or Denmark. It's going to be like a California does that way, and this state might be behind. And that's the hard part of this, is they're all going to be moving at different speeds, and that's going to affect each other's economies and the cannabis industry. So the way I'm viewing it is, there's going to be, hopefully a gradual loosening. And we just all have to, again, batten down the hatches. There's not going to be something, if anyone is, again, thinking that in 3 or 6 months, their business or this industry is going to look like it did in January, I think they're going to have a hard time adapting. We just all have to adjust to this new reality and know that we don't know the answer. So my personal way of doing that is saying we're preparing for all scenarios. We're being conservative because we don't know, and I can't sit here and say I know. I don't even have a feeling, except that we're going to have to get the economy going at some point. And what that looks like, I don't know, but we want to be ready for whatever that looks like and however that rolls out.
Well, we certainly know we're in a historic time. We thought we were just trying to keep that green wave moving through Washington and into business. And now we've got this big, a pothole in our world that we've got to figure out a way to get out of. And Chris Walsh, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. And I really hope you'll be a kind dad and give your computer back to your daughter.
Oh, it's a constant battle. And just to close out, we did furlough 30% of our staff, but we did it because we don't know what's around the corner, and we hope and expect to bring them back with our new plan forward and our enhanced plan. And so, we're betting on a way to navigate this and hopefully, get back to normalcy over time. If we were approaching a really dire mode, this would have looked different, our internal moves. And I know a lot of businesses out there are considering what to do and how they approach this. And, we're all in this together, and we're all going to get through it together. And I think we're going to learn a lot through this, and we'll be ready for whatever comes down the road.
Fair enough. All right, Chris Walsh, thank you so much again for joining us. For Chris Walsh and Curt Dalton, I'm the host of Weed Talk Now from Pro Cannabis Media. My name's Jimmy Young. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly, stay safe, and stay sane. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.